It's no fault of Elvis, you know, he loved the song. Dolly Parton, America's sweetheart and country music's beloved icon, has spent decades charming the world with her voice and heart. But what if we told you that behind that dazzling smile lies a trail of tension, betrayal, and legendary feuds that never made the headlines? They smiled on camera, and they praised her in public. But behind the scenes, there were slammed doors, bitter words, and broken friendships. One singer said they'd never work with her again. Another tried to steal her biggest hit. And although she's tried to keep it a secret, we finally know the 5 singers Dolly couldn't stand working with. But what really happened behind closed doors? And why are some of those old wounds still wide open today? When you find out the truth, you'll never see Dolly Parton the same way again. Dolly Parton's journey to fame. You might know her for the big hair, the bedazzled outfits, and that voice that could make angels cry. But behind the scenes, Dolly Parton has a story that's more jaw-dropping than you think. Her journey from dirt-poor beginnings to music royalty is one for the books. And many people don't know that it's packed with a lot of drama. While she's known as the Queen of Kindness, there are a few names in the industry that she's had some intense friction with. But to understand who Dolly clashed with, you first have to understand her and why she's not one to get involved in drama. Dolly Rebecca Parton was born on January 19, 1946, in a tiny one-room cabin in Locust Ridge, Tennessee. She was raised in a loving but struggling family, with 12 kids crammed into a simple mountain home. Her father, Lee Parton, was a hard-working farmer and construction man who couldn't read or write. But Dolly says he was the smartest man she ever knew. Her mother, A.V. Lee, had 12 children before she turned 35, and she definitely passed on her deep love for storytelling, music, and God to Dolly. But music wasn't a hobby for Dolly. It was survival. The Partons didn't have money for entertainment, so the kids learned to sing in church and harmonize on the porch. Dolly's family noticed her voice early on, and by the time she was 10, she was performing on local radio and TV shows in nearby Knoxville. And it wasn't long before she began performing at the Grand Ole Opry. The day after she graduated high school in 1964, she packed a bag and took off for Nashville with no money or connections. Just raw talent and dreams bigger than the Smoky Mountains she left behind. And she started off by writing songs for others. But she didn't just want to be a songwriter. She wanted the spotlight, and she got it. Her first country hit came in 1967 with Dumb Blonde, a clever little song that basically told the world she wasn't just a pretty face, but a smart one. But how did she go from a Nashville newbie to a global icon? Well, it all began when she joined the Porter Wagoner Show in 1967, and everything changed. Millions saw her on TV every week. Her duets with Porter were instant hits. People loved their chemistry, their harmonies, and Dolly's magnetic personality. And by the early 70s, she launched her solo career, and no one could stop her. Jolene came in 1973 and became an anthem. Then came I Will Always Love You, which was a global hit. And in case you're wondering, yes, Whitney Houston's version came much later, and turned it into one of the biggest songs of all time. But Dolly still owns the rights. She made millions from that one song, and she never brags about it. By the 1980s, Dolly was everywhere. In movies, music, merch, you name it. She starred in 9 to 5 alongside Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin and proved she wasn't just a singer, she could act too. Then came Dollywood, her very own theme park, which opened in 1986 in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. While other stars were buying yachts, Dolly built a family amusement park in her hometown to boost the local economy. But don't let the kindness fool you, because Dolly's one of the smartest businesswomen in showbiz. She's written over thousands of songs, earned multiple Grammys and Lifetime Achievement Awards, and has been inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which is not bad for a girl who had no running water growing up. But that's not all. She's also given away millions of books through her Imagination Library, a project that makes sure kids have access to books, no matter where they live. Over the years, Dolly has built this image of being sweet, humble, and above the drama. But even a Southern angel has her limits, and over the decades, a few names have popped up again and again. People she clashed with, people who underestimated her, people who thought they could control her or take credit for her shine. And of course, Dolly remembers. She may smile through it, but behind the scenes there have been feuds, tension, and hurt feelings she's never forgotten. And one of the earliest, and perhaps most complicated, was with a man who helped launch her career, then tried to own it. And you won't believe how this professional partnership turned into one of the messiest splits in country music. Dolly Parton versus Porter Wagoner. Before Dolly was a global icon, Porter Wagoner was already a huge name in country music. He made a name for himself with a charm and a voice that could cut through any heart. He wasn't just a singer, he was a full-on showman, and by the 1960s, he had his own TV show called The Porter Wagoner Show, one of the biggest syndicated country music shows in America. His stage presence was flashy, but behind the scenes he was sharp, business-minded, and deeply traditional. He knew what sold, and he saw something special in Dolly Parton. When Dolly Parton joined Porter's show, replacing his previous female vocalist, Norma Jean, for fans who adored Norma, the swap wasn't welcome at first. People booed Dolly on stage. Some even wrote her angry letters, but Porter insisted on keeping her. And Dolly, she stayed gracious, calm, and determined because she had a point to prove. And it didn't take long for the two to become a hit duo. Their harmonies were electric, and their chemistry was pure gold. Together they scored over a dozen top 10 hits. Songs and on camera, they looked like the perfect team, but behind the smiles, tension was brewing. Here's the thing. Porter Wagoner didn't just want to sing with Dolly. He reportedly wanted to control her career. He managed her appearances, decided what songs they'd record, and had the final say on most business decisions. But Dolly wasn't just a singer with a pretty face. She was a songwriter, a thinker, and a woman with her own vision. She had ambition that stretched far beyond duet records and guest spots on TV. She played along for years, but the more famous she became, the more she wanted to stand on her own. Soon she was getting frustrated, and she began writing songs that didn't fit the Porter and Dolly mold. She wanted creative freedom and, more importantly, control over her own voice. She later confessed that Porter had a hard time thinking of her as his equal. In the beginning, he had given her a platform, but years later, that same platform had become a cage. Still, she didn't leave right away. She knew she owed him a lot. But by 1973, the tension was unbearable. And in 1974, she left the Porter Wagoner Show. To the public, it looked amicable. But behind closed doors, that was just the beginning. 5 years after she walked away, Porter came back swinging with lawyers. In 1979, he sued Dolly for $3 million, claiming that she'd broken their contract. He said she owed him for management fees, show expenses, and a cut of her income since leaving the show. Dolly was stunned. She had always seen Porter as a mentor, even if they didn't part on great terms. This lawsuit felt like betrayal, and for a while, it got ugly. There were public statements, press coverage, and industry whispers, but Dolly didn't drag him through the mud. Instead, she quietly settled the case out of court. She later spoke about how she didn't want to fight, but just wanted to be free instead. The whole situation took a toll on Dolly emotionally. Porter had meant something to her, and he had been there at the beginning. They'd made history together, and yet he couldn't let her go without a fight. She once said in an interview, "When I was trying to leave the show, I had told Porter I'd stay 5 years. It had been 5, and it was 6, and it was 7. He was just having a really hard time because it was going to mess up his show. We were very bound and tied together in so many emotional ways, and he just would not hear it. That statement said it all. Their feud wasn't just about money. It was much deeper than that, and this revealed an ugly part of Porter that Dolly had never seen before. And this reportedly hurt her so much. But the good part is that time, as always, changes things. By the late 1980s, after years of being on bad terms, Porter and Dolly had started talking again. In 2002, Dolly did something that surprised a lot of people. She inducted Porter Wagoner into the Country Music Hall of Fame. On stage, she told the audience how much he meant to her, even through their tough times. And when Porter was hospitalized in 2007 with lung cancer, Dolly reportedly visited him. Just weeks later, Porter passed away. Dolly was devastated. She held a tribute concert at Dollywood, not for the public, not for the headlines, but for the man who helped launch her dreams, even if he tried to hold them back. This experience with Porter is definitely one of the most complex chapters in Dolly's career, and one that shaped her in ways few people realize. But this next person on Dolly's list said something that shocked not just Dolly, but the entire world. Dolly Parton versus Linda Ronstadt. They were the dream team, three powerhouse women in country music: Dolly Parton, Linda Ronstadt, and Emmylou Harris, who came together to collaborate on the legendary album Trio. Their voices blended perfectly, producing hits that still give us chills. But behind the scenes, it wasn't all sunshine and sing-alongs, especially between Dolly and Linda. And what started as a musical sisterhood nearly unraveled into a full-blown feud. Back in the mid-1970s, Dolly, Linda, and Emmylou were already stars in their own right. They admired each other's work and dreamed of collaborating. But with conflicting schedules and record label politics, their plans kept getting delayed. It wasn't until 1987 that their first album, titled Trio, finally dropped. The album was a smash. It went platinum, topped the country charts, and even snagged a Grammy. But while the music was harmonious, the recording sessions were anything but that. Dolly, known for her quick work ethic, preferred to nail songs in 1 or 2 takes. Linda, on the other hand, was a perfectionist, often spending hours to get a single vocal just right. Emmylou was the mediator, trying to keep the peace. Dolly once revealed that working with Linda was like dealing with a diva who loves to live in the studio and work so slowly. She even spoke about wanting to yell at Linda countless times. It got so bad that it became clear to everyone that their working styles clashed and tensions were simmering beneath the surface. Despite the challenges, the trio attempted a second album in 1994. They recorded Trio 2, but label disputes and scheduling conflicts delayed its release. Thankfully, the album eventually saw the light of day in 1999. But it was too late, as the damage to their relationship was done. While Dolly and Linda's relationship may have started with mutual admiration and some friendly competition, it certainly didn't end on the best of terms. In fact, Linda was quite vocal about her frustrations with Dolly's unreliability when it came to the project. Linda once slammed Dolly in an interview, stating that she was hard to rely on during the recording sessions. She claimed that Dolly would often cancel plans or show up late, and this frustrated her a lot. In fact, she once said that Dolly was never on time and that she was always a little flaky. But it wasn't just about being tardy. Linda made it clear that she felt Dolly didn't fully respect the process or commitment needed to complete the project. Linda felt like Dolly was more concerned with her solo career than the group effort, and it left a bitter taste between them. That tension between the two was enough to cause some serious friction. In fact, Linda made it known that she had no intention of working with Dolly again. Linda confessed that she felt that Dolly's lack of professionalism had spoiled what was supposed to be a joyful collaboration. Of course, time heals some wounds, because years later, despite all the bad blood, Linda and Dolly would show signs of reconciling. but it wasn't without its moments of awkwardness. It's clear that both women probably still held a grudge, and while they aren't openly hostile towards each other, they don't exactly make an effort to rekindle their friendship. So while the trio legacy lived on and fans celebrated their historic collaboration, Linda's words still echoed in Dolly's ears, leaving a bad taste in her mouth. Elvis Presley. When you think of Elvis Presley, you think of the king of rock and roll, a cultural icon who changed the face of music forever. And then there's Dolly Parton, the country queen whose songwriting skills have made her a legend. But despite their legendary status in the music world, there was one moment in history when the two musical giants almost crossed paths. But they didn't, due to a serious tension involving one iconic song. It all began with Dolly's iconic ballad, "I Will Always Love You." This song, which Dolly wrote in 1973, was deeply personal for her. It was about her decision to leave her longtime mentor, Porter Wagner, and pursue a solo career. While it started as a heartfelt farewell, it became one of the most well-loved country songs of all time. And Dolly poured everything into the lyrics. The song was released as a single and quickly became a hit, earning her widespread recognition. But what she didn't know at the time was that Elvis Presley's team had their eyes on the song too. The king himself wanted to cover it, and his team was already making moves to make it happen. In the mid-1970s, Elvis was on top of the world. He had a reputation for taking other artists' songs and making them his own. So, when he expressed interest in "I Will Always Love You," Dolly was understandably flattered. However, there was a serious problem. You see, Elvis's manager, Colonel Tom Parker, had a reputation for demanding outrageous deals when it came to songs for Elvis to record. And Dolly, who was just starting to make a name for herself as a songwriter, was not willing to bend. Colonel Parker wanted to take at least 50% of the royalties for any song Elvis recorded. And this was something Dolly couldn't accept. It wasn't just about the money, it was about respect for her craft. Dolly knew the value of her work, and she wasn't about to let someone take advantage of it. And so she turned Presley down. She told his manager, "This is the most important copyright in my whole publishing company, and I can't do that." Dolly has often shared that she felt very hurt about the deal Elvis's team presented to her. Although she admired him as an artist, this deal felt like a trap, one that was done intentionally to exploit her. And this made her feel bad. Dolly later revealed that Elvis was very upset by her refusal. According to her, Elvis had loved the song and really wanted to record it. She felt bad for him, but knew that if she gave in, it would set a precedent for other artists and managers to take advantage of her in the future. The tension between Dolly and Elvis wasn't just about a song, it was deeply personal. Though she tried to be respectful about it, the situation caused a strain between them. And Dolly later admitted that she didn't think Elvis ever fully forgave her for saying no. In interviews, Dolly has said she was heartbroken by the fallout, especially since she respected Elvis so much as an artist. She even noted that Elvis was very sensitive, and while he didn't lash out directly, there was a noticeable shift between them after that. In the end, Dolly's decision to hold on to "I Will Always Love You" would prove to be the best one for her career. Eventually, Whitney Houston covered the song and turned it into one of the most successful songs of all time. The success of Houston's version brought the song to a whole new generation, and it made Dolly millions in royalties. But despite the tension with Elvis, Dolly never regretted her decision. She has said that she felt good about standing up for herself, even if it meant going against one of the biggest stars of her time. But this isn't the only time Dolly has stood up for herself in the face of tension. Howard Stern. For someone as sweet, humble, and scandal-free as Dolly Parton, it takes a lot to ruffle her feathers. But back in 2008, one man pushed her to the edge. That man was Howard Stern, widely known for his brash and unapologetic approach to life. Howard Stern is no stranger to drama, and to date, He's known as one of the most controversial and influential radio personalities of all time. His show, The Howard Stern Show, exploded in popularity during the 80s and 90s. Stern built his empire on saying the things most people wouldn't dare. For his fans, he was fearless. For his critics, he was crude and often offensive. And in 2008, Dolly Parton found herself in the midst of an extremely controversial scandal involving Stern. In one of his most controversial segments, his team edited together clips from Dolly's audiobook, My Life and Other Unfinished Business, into a fake interview. They made use of actual recordings of Dolly's voice and spliced together words and phrases to make it sound like she was saying some of the most vulgar, racist, and disgusting things imaginable. The segment made it sound like Dolly insulted other artists like Kenny Rogers and Linda Ronstadt, along with making rude remarks about her own body and personal life. It was supposed to be funny, but it's far from that. Instead, it was mean, tasteless, and deeply offensive. Stern's crew played it on air and laughed, because to them, it was just another shock segment. But for Dolly and her millions of fans, it was a full-on character assassination. Dolly isn't known to get mad easily, but this time was different. She issued a rare and emotional public statement saying, "I have never been so shocked, hurt, and humiliated in all my life. I cannot believe what Howard Stern has done to me. In a blue million years, I would never have such vulgar things come out of my mouth." She said what Stern had done was extremely vile, and she even hinted at taking legal action against him. That was really huge, because Dolly almost never threatens court. She said, "If there was ever going to be a lawsuit, it's going to be over this. Just wanted you to know that I am completely devastated by this." Fans were outraged. Country music stations, longtime Dolly supporters, and even casual listeners flooded forums and comment sections defending her. When the backlash hit, Howard Stern didn't flinch. He didn't apologize, and he didn't even express regret. Instead, he laughed it off, insisting it was just a joke. He claimed it was never meant to hurt her, and that people were being too sensitive. To Stern, it was just satire, but to Dolly, it was deeply personal, and she sure didn't forgive him right away. After that ugly moment in 2008, Dolly and Howard didn't interact again. Dolly, as always, took the high road, and she never slammed Stern on TV or in the press. Instead, she let the public do the talking for her. But the wound lingered, and for years, fans brought up the feud every time. However, something unexpected happened between the two after many years. In 2023, Dolly Parton shocked fans by appearing on The Howard Stern Show for the very first time. It had been 15 years since the scandal, and nobody expected her to walk into that studio. But Dolly had a new mission. She was promoting her genre-breaking rock album, Rockstar. And if there was ever a time to step out of her comfort zone, this was it. Stern was surprisingly respectful. He called her a legend. He complimented her energy and her voice. And for once, he dialed back the sarcasm. However, the tension in the room was quite obvious, and it felt like if Dolly hadn't wanted to promote her album, she would have never agreed to be on the show. But Dolly proved once again just how mature she is, and how she holds the ability to rewrite the narrative on her own terms. Jeff Tweedy of Wilco. Dolly Parton's status in the music world is almost untouchable, and it's hard to imagine anyone publicly criticizing her work. But, as with many legends, there are always those who have differing opinions. And Jeff Tweedy, the frontman of alt-country band Wilco, wasn't afraid to voice his opinions. While Jeff Tweedy is respected in his own right for his songwriting, especially in the indie and alternative country realms, he made headlines when he openly criticized Dolly's songwriting and its place in the broader music landscape. And what followed was a moment of tension between two musical forces, leaving Dolly very unhappy about the comments. The drama began when Jeff Tweedy was interviewed and spoke about Dolly Parton and her songwriting. While Tweedy acknowledged Dolly's place in music history and her impact on country music, he was quick to criticize the quality of her lyrics, calling them superficial. He made it clear that he didn't see her songwriting as being as deep or meaningful as others in the music world. To Tweedy, Dolly's songs were more about catchy hooks and less about complex, thought-provoking lyrics. In one particularly telling interview, Tweedy compared Dolly to other songwriters who he felt delivered more depth in their work. He argued that while Dolly's songs may have a wide appeal, they lacked the complexity that he believed was necessary for great songwriting. He even went so far as to suggest that Dolly's success was more about her persona and less about the depth of her music. When asked if he hated Parton, he said, "No, I love Dolly Parton. All I know is that she wrote Jolene, and I will always love you on the same day. And I think she should have stopped after Jolene." While Tweedy's comments weren't exactly cruel, they were undeniably critical, especially coming from someone who is known for his own brand of deeply personal, sometimes abstract lyrics. He seemed to dismiss Dolly's approach to songwriting, reducing her long, successful career to something less than what it was. Some reports eventually claimed that Dolly was aware of Tweedy's comments and didn't appreciate the criticism. Dolly has always been proud of her work as a songwriter, with many of her songs being deeply personal and reflective of her own life and experiences. So to hear someone, especially a fellow musician, undermine that work must have stung a bit. What's even more interesting is that Dolly has always been open about her struggles as a songwriter, and the fact that she writes from the heart. In interviews, she's often described how personal her lyrics are and how they reflect her life and experiences. And this makes the criticism from Tweedy seem almost irrelevant to her mission. She's been around long enough to know that despite what critics say, her songs resonate with millions of people. And that's what really matters. Ultimately, Dolly Parton's legacy as a songwriter is undeniable. Whether or not Jeff Tweedy or any other critic appreciates her work doesn't change the fact that her music has touched millions. Her songs have been covered by the biggest names in music, transcending genres and generations, and her influence as a songwriter is etched into the fabric of American music history. Dolly Parton's journey through the world of music has been anything but ordinary. She's endured numerous feuds and had to navigate criticisms from those within and outside the industry. But she's faced it all with the grace and resilience that only a true icon can. But what do you think? Which of these feuds had the biggest impact on Dolly's career? Let us know what you think in the comments below. And if you love juicy deep dives into celebrity lives, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you never miss a new video.